Hey, Back to Basics. This is Tyrone, your Friday vlogger, and you can find me on the YouTubes on Fat Kings TV, or you can find me on the Facebooks at VSGTLJ. And this month we are doing a school-based theme, and for this week we're talking about were you overweight, how did your weight, how were your school years, how were your school years affected by your weight, and then how did that kind of roll over into your adulthood years. And I was a fat kid. By the time I was 11 or 12, by the time I was in 6th grade, I was 5'7", 180 or 185, so I was a big kid. And first grade, second grade, everybody's friends. There's no real cliques yet. But by 5th grade, 6th grade, cliques started forming, and I was definitely the outcast, and I think some of that had to do with my weight, and some of it had to do with I just never was one to go along with the crowd. Everybody had to have that cool thing, that cool toy, the cool bracelets, the cool freaking little sticky, slappy hand things. If you grew up in the 80s, you knew what I'm talking about. But I just never cared to join in on the clicky type stuff, and I also didn't realize how big I was. I didn't realize that the extra strength that I would have, or the leverage I'd have over other people in school. So I just kind of got picked on and ostracized, and I didn't like that. But there was a turning point. There was one thing in particular that caused a turning point, and that was we had indoor recess in 6th grade, and the teacher wasn't in the room. We were having recess, inside due to weather. And if you live in cold states, you know what that's all about. And there was 4 guys. They were picking on me. It was Chris, Chad, Seth, and Johnny. And something, I don't know what, but I just snapped. I just lost it. I grabbed a hold of Chad. I started choking him, and he was reaching out to his buddies, please help me, because I had him in a headlock. And Chris came over, and he was pushing me, and he hit me to try to get me off Chad. And I think I kicked him, or I punched him, and then Johnny came over, and I kicked him. And then Seth got into it, and at that point, so we got 3-on-1, and one of my hands was tied up because I was holding Chad by the head, and I let go of him, and then it just turned into a brawl. So it was me on 4 guys, and I pretty much kicked the shit out of them. And my friend Josh actually is what stopped it. He kind of got in between it, and he's like, okay, you need to chill the fuck out. So by the time the teacher got back, it was over with. I mean, all this happened in over maybe 5 minutes. But from then on, I didn't get picked on anymore. And that made me realize the power of violence, and that theme kind of carried through really the rest of my life. I'm better these days, but even now I can get pretty violent. But then going from elementary school into junior high school, I grew a lot. So I got tall. So I went from 5'7", 185 to like 6'2", 185. So I slimmed out a lot, and I got attention from the women, and the popular kids wanted to bring me into their clique, but I just had no interest in it. The geeky kids, I guess you could call it, were just more interesting to me. But I played sports. I was good at sports. I wasn't the last kid picked. Middle school was a good time, or junior high school was a good time. But the violence theme carried on, but it was more in defense of others. So if I saw somebody getting picked on, I would just start punching people. I would not allow anybody around me to get picked on, whether I knew them or not. And I actually remember one of the guys I got picked on, his name was Edward Stafford. And he went on to become an engineer. I saw him not too long ago. Well, when I say not too long ago, it was like 10 years ago, but it was well after junior high school. But I would actually be the one locking popular kids in their locker. And I didn't date the cheerleaders. I dated the fat girls, just because they had personality, The friends I had, I was able to drift in and out of all the groups. I didn't have one group that I stuck with. So I'd hang out with the stoners, I'd hang out with the jocks, I'd hang out with the geeky kids, and I just accepted everybody for who they were, but the theme of violence still stayed there, so that gave me hard times in school. So I had a real hard time in school because of the position I took. I always went to violence for answers, and that carried on through. I had problems in towards the end of my junior high years, and I actually got kicked out of the district for beating up my principal. So I had to go and stay with my grandmother so I could go to school, because I couldn't go to school anywhere in that district. And then eventually at like 15, I left home. Everybody's heard this story before if you watch the other videos. I'm Fat King to left home. I was homeless for a year. 15, 16, had a kid, and then I just kind of worked myself back into school. I had my own place, I had a car, and I tried to go back to high school, but I just could not relate to those people. High school, there really isn't much to talk about in high school. Then you get into college, and college was just more of the same. People mature, and your groups kind of coalesce a little more. It's not as cliquey, not near as cliquey as it was in earlier years, but I still had the reoccurring theme of violence or asserting myself whenever I saw what I felt to be an unjust thing, whether it was an action against me or an action against somebody else. I never really turned to talking. I would just go straight to violence. So I would say that was probably the bad thing that came out of being fat, being overweight, even though it took place over a few years, was the violence. And now it's better. I think mainly because I'm older and I'm broke. My shoulder just had surgery. This other shoulder not doing so good. Obviously I got overweight, so cardio wasn't really there. So if I got in fights, I had to either get done quick or get the shit kicked out of me. But I don't know. That's pretty much what I have to share about that. Would I have been different had I not been fat? I don't know. Maybe to a certain extent, but I think just because of the way my household was, I think at some point I would have discovered the power of violence anyway. So I don't think that it changed it too much. I think any opportunity that was presented to me or that was available to any kid, I could have taken advantage of. Some I did, some I didn't. So for me, there really wasn't a whole lot that weight, a whole lot of a role that weight played for me in school, except for elementary school. And then I guess in a way it made me a better person. So I guess that would be the good thing. I'm sorry that I'm kind of out of it. This sounds very disjointed because I'm picturing it in my head. I'm kind of reliving it, and I'm trying to convey it to you guys in some way that makes sense. But it did teach me compassion towards others. It did teach me to look into somebody a little bit more than just what you see on the surface. So I've never been a surface-based person. I'm far more a personality or what a person's really like is what I look at more than what somebody looks like. What do you have to offer on an intellectual level? What kind of person are you? So if I was never fat, maybe I would have never found that. Maybe I just would have been a superficial person. I don't know. So anyway, there you have it. Good times. Pound of Cure's a fad diet. And remember, if you can't love yourself, love me. I'll see you next time.